What's going on YouTube? JT is Reborn here, and welcome back to another edition of my DC comic book reviews. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about DC vs. Vampires, issue number 12 of 12 of this limited series. The grand conclusion, what we've all been waiting for. How is this series going to end? Is it going to be the most exciting thing ever, or is it going to be a major disappointment? I'm leaning towards major disappointment because this is a lie. This is a lie of an ending. It's not a very good ending, unless, of course, they're going to be doing some sort of sequel thing. There's so many unresolved plot threads by the end of this thing. It's not a satisfying conclusion. Why even have the limited series thing on there? Because based on the way this thing ends, it just feels like it's going to end on a bit of a cliffhanger. There's no big payoff for a lot of the characters. Some things are just kind of left to the side. The artwork is really good. If this were issue like 10 or 11, I'd be okay with it, but there's still so much stuff unresolved. It felt like they just didn't really want to end this thing, and they're just like, no, we're gonna keep going this thing. Maybe we'll get a sequel, Greenland or something down the road. You have to have a sequel at this point because this is one of the most unsatisfying endings to a story in a long time, because there is no real conclusion to it. There's so many other characters left. Kind of, it's like a big cliffhanger at the end of season 1 of a TV show, and you don't know if it's going to get renewed or not for a second season. That's basically where we're at with this thing. It ends on a cliffhanger and no real big resolution to it all. So unless, of course, we're getting a conclusion to it, then, like, as it stands, this is not a satisfying ending for this story. But if we are getting a sequel of some sort, it's like a direct continuation, then I'd be more okay with it, because it still means we're getting more of the story. But for an event dubbed a 12-issue limited series with, of course, various spinoffs in that, I figured they'd just go to a big conclusion at this point, but they really didn't. So let's go ahead and talk about this thing, and I'll talk about what my big issues with it are. And as I've kind of stated here in the opening, my big issue with it is this is not a conclusion. You have to do a follow-up, otherwise this would be a truly bad way to end it, because like I said, there's no big payoff for a lot of the characters. Jaina and all her storyline didn't really have a big payoff. Things feel like they're finally moving in a certain direction, and then they throw a curveball kind of at the end and don't really have a full conclusion to this thing. Maybe it'll be a deceased situation where they do multiple series over the next couple of years, but only time will tell. But as it stands, DC vs. Vampires kind of disappointed me with this thing. So Outer Smith's art's really great. So we have the three fronts. We have Gotham, Australia, Smallville, and basically Barbara gets captured, and along with Harley, to go meet Dick Grayson, the Vampire King. He talks about the whole thing. He's like, I need you in my life, Barbara. We can finally do things better than what we were doing before, and join me and live forever, or whatever. I love you, and all that other stuff. We can do things better. And then he bites her neck, and he turns her into a vampire. And yeah, they're pretty much into it. They're making out. They're having a good time, but Barbara kind of tricks him at one point into biting Harley Quinn, who actually has some sort of cure within her, as we showcased back in her little special, the DC vs. Vampires Hunters or Killers or whatever it was with her, that part of the cure for vampirism is within her DNA. So as soon as she got bit by Dick Grayson, he engulfed into flames and he died. So that's that. And then basically the ending of the issue is Barbara Gordon is now the vampire queen, and she's going to take over the world. That's pretty much it. She's going to lead the vampire race. It was very easy to turn her, it seemed, and now she's the main villain with a lot of unresolved plot threads. Supergirl finally got back. We have Alfred and his mission going on there. We have Swamp Thing, Oliver Queen, and Grifter, who are kind of working together. And then Damian seems to be kind of the last Bat Family member standing that isn't fully, like, evil. He is basically the blade of this thing. But my big issue is, if you're calling this a limited 12 edition series, then you better have a conclusion to it. This right here, there is no conclusion, and it's really kind of frustrating because we had all this build-up. We had a year build-up to the ending of this event, and we had the various tie-ins in that. I thought we were going to wrap this thing up by this point. I thought this would have been a cool 12-issue miniseries. We didn't really need all-out war. I think that was the weak point of it all. I think the art really hindered that, and we could have had something great, but they didn't really want to wrap up the story. And even with DC versus Vampires, the second half was not as good as the first half. It felt like in some ways it was kind of written into a bit of a corner where they just kept adding and adding and adding and adding and adding to it, to the point where it's kind of convoluted in some ways, but a bit messy at times, but still entertaining. But I just was really frustrated by the ending to this thing because it's such a non-ending. What do we get with Jana's payoff? Really nothing. What about Damian going to get back in and stop Dick Grayson for all that? Nope, Dick Grayson's done. Barbara killed him, and now she's going to be the main villain going forward as the Vampire Queen. What a strange, bizarre way to end this limited series. It says limited series on there, so are we ever going to get a follow-up to it? Because if we're not, then I'm sorry. This is not a satisfying ending to the story. I feel kind of ripped off because I was promised the conclusion of this thing, and they basically sequel baited it and didn't really deliver a big satisfying payoff for all the ongoing stories that are going on here. Damian's story is left off on a bit of a dour note. Oliver Queen's thing, yeah, he rescued some people, but what did it amount to? Supergirl, who was this whole thing about rescuing her, yeah, she's finally back, but she didn't really do much. She did laser somebody to death, but I figured that all this would kind of come together with everybody finally stopping it all and we can all go home happy. But no, they just left it on a cliffhanger ending of sorts. And I'm sorry, but for something advertised as a limited series, unless we get a direct follow-up, I'm not going to be happy with this ending as it stands now, because I don't know if they're really going to do it. It hasn't been announced in the solicitations or anything like that. It's just... It's a very unsatisfying conclusion to DC versus Vampires. Unless for sure you're going to get a sequel, then don't advertise this as a limited series finale, because that's just a bunch of lies and it's kind of bullshit. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in this thing. Really good artwork. If this were a few issues ago and we had this point in the story, I'd probably be more okay and on board with it. But as a conclusion to DC versus Vampires, after all the stuff I read like 20 issues of this thing. If you count the 6 all-out war tie-ins, the 12 issues of this, and then the 2 kind of spin-off ones focusing on Damian Wayne as a vampire hunter and the Harley Quinn one. That's 20 issues to wrap up this story. And I feel ripped off. I don't think this is a satisfying conclusion. So, yeah, I wasn't too happy with this one. Unless, of course, we're going to get some sort of follow-up, then I'll probably be more okay with it. But ending on a cliffhanger right now without any surefire knowledge of knowing we're going to get a continuation is rather frustrating. So, there you go. I just... stupid cliffhangers. Cliffhangers really tick me off sometimes. And the thing is, if we do get a follow-up, how long is it going to take? Am I going to have to wait an entire year or two before I get a continuation of this? I don't know. But only time will tell. So, anyways, those are my thoughts on this one. I got one more comic book left, and I'll be wrapped up with all the comic book reviews for 2022. It's been quite an eventful year for DC Comics. Some really good stuff, some not so good stuff, and... just ending on a rather interesting note. Hopefully Detective Comics, I haven't read it yet, will end the year on a bit of a high note, because I don't want to go out on a disappointment with DC versus Vampires number 12. So there you go. If you have any thoughts on it, let me know in the comment section down below. What did you think of this ending? Are you annoyed as I am that it ended on a damn cliffhanger by not really having a big follow-up to a lot of the characters and their story setups? Post your comments down below and we can share our upsetness, or if you really liked it, let me know what you think of it. So look forward to that. But anyways, I'll be back later on today to talk about Detective Comics, and that'll be it for the DC comic book reviews for 2022. So look forward to all that stuff. All right, well, that's all I got to say. As always, take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video.